right. Good evening. Welcome to the Personnel Policy and Administration Committee meeting for October 20th. We will begin like we do all our committee meetings with Tom Hernandez and Community Relations update.
All right, thank you. So this particular report is about 20 months in coming. One of the things that I'm always most proud of about public education is that we do our best to serve all students, students who learn differently, students who have different socioeconomic backgrounds, different interests. And in District 202, I think we do that particularly well through a couple of different programs. One is Plainfield Academy, which, as you know, is a collection of programs that serve students with different learning needs. And two is Local, the career cooperative that we belong to. And so back in February of 2020, we started to do a long-form video about the academy programs that, of course, came to a screeching halt. And we are finally now back to getting that project finished, and Kelly Larson is working on that. I've seen it kind of a rough cut, it's beautiful. And then Linda Taylor is also working on a long-form video about ROCO, which is a
system. No stops may be made during the transport of the student. Prior to transporting any student in a private vehicle, the school employee must have the permission of a district administrator. At least 2 employees, each of the opposite sex, must be in the vehicle transporting the student. One of the 2 employees must be a current building or district office administrator. And no person shall be permitted to transport students who is not the holder of a valid license to operating motor vehicle in the state of Illinois, driver's license, and automobile liability or personal injury insurance. So these are the proposed items. And just to kind of talk through this process, so these are created in conjunction with working with the building administration. The directors worked with them to gather these ideas. And so at this point, we would just ask if there's any questions, any comments, anything that you would like us to look at, to add, and we would then consider making those changes, and then we can bring those amended changes to Monday's board meeting. So these are our proposals. We are open for feedback, questions, or anything.
I had a question. The bullet about contact must be made with the parent guardian the same day and no later than the day after, both, or one or the other?
Contact must be made with the parent the same day the transportation occurs and no later than the day after the transportation occurs. So I think this goes aligned with the third bullet. If permission cannot be secured, notice must be provided to the student parent guardian that the student will be transported home in a private vehicle by the district employee. Such notice would be provided in voicemail. So it would be a double communication at that point.
So they contact twice?
Yes.
Okay. So that call them then the next day
Yes.
to. Okay. So I'm not comfortable with staff driving. I do like the part that it says one of them has to be an administrator. So my questions would just be, if it's outside of, I'm assuming outside the school day, if there's a kid left that needs a ride home, and if one of those people are a teacher, do we then pay the teacher for that time?
Yeah,
to do
so
that?
yeah, so chances are the teachers they're already working in a supervisory role with sports coaching or what have you. And so if there's compensation needed because it's outside of what their coaching responsibility is, we would absolutely compensate them. There's a supervisory stipend in the contract. Talking with administration, because I think this is really important. The amount of times this actually happens is very, very rare. There are some principals who have been in our buildings leading 10, 11 years. They've never driven them home. And there are some that have 2-3 times over a 6-year period of time. And the circumstances really stem to high school example of a common one was athletics. A student stays back. The parent thought the student was getting a ride home with another student or another family, and the parent, they have no vehicle at home. So they have no transportation, the parents are home. So that would be an example of when administration, a coach, AD would drive the student home. And sometimes They waited out till, you know,
Mhm.
8:30, 9 at night, and then, you know, at some point, you know, the decision is made. Implementing this, it is really rare that we are in this situation. The thing about bringing it here is we don't have procedures in place that align with that. So I think
Sure.
the next step is once we go through this approval process, there is a professional development with administration, starting with the building principals and then extending down to their leadership team and even their teachers, letting them know these processes.
Has it ever happened with a really young student? Because that's another thought I have is like, this to me then applies to all our kids ages 3 to 21.
Sure, yeah, so we did talk to a couple elementary principals.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about
Yeah,
that?
it again, it's very rare. Most of the time, the answer is just we don't do it. And so there has been times where kids have been left at school. It gets to 6:30, 7 o'clock, and what the procedure is at this point is we would if we've exhausted all the contacts, we actually would call the police.
Sure.
So that's done. There's been again, there was a time where a girl was really sick and to get home, and so an administrator and I believe it was both administrators took her home based on the fact that that was the only way she was going to get home, and the parents were there waiting.
Yeah.
So again, very, very rare.
I guess my concern is the part where if we don't get a hold of the parent and then we're taking a child home, are we assuming the parent's there? And what happens if we drive the kid and no one's there and the administrator makes a call that I'm gonna leave the kid as a key, I'm gonna leave him here?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think it's something that we definitely need to look at. In talking with the directors today, there's always a parent contacted. There is always someone who knows, who have been in this rare situation. And I do feel it's fair for us to put a point saying that parent contact has to be made prior to transporting the student. I think it's fair to put that in there because it's happening now anyway. Between the emergency contacts and the parent and the guardians and how to get it, this day and age, contacting the parent is pretty easy to do.
Sure.
So if a recommendation that I'm hearing is that a parent or guardian must be contacted prior to transporting the student, we're comfortable with that because that's our current practice.
Yeah, it's the part about leaving the voicemail.
Yep.
And I don't ever want a staff member who may not know all the details about a kid that makes an assumption that, oh, this kid's 15, I can drop them off at home, they can let themselves in.
So my next question is does that contact have to be verbal? Or can contact be made via text or email? Because in some cases, if a parent is at a job where they can't answer their phone, but they might be able to respond to a text or an email, is that acceptable?
As long as it is from a phone that is in our student emergency that they're identified with. So all their cell phones, or whatever they have, they're all in our system.
Yeah.
So we would have to verify that the phone contact is in our current system.
So then it makes that other part, that moot point.
I'm gonna read what I'm gonna.
Okay.
Okay, so if we look at the third bullet point.
Yep.
Attempts must be made to secure oral permission from the parent guardian before the student can be transported. That whole next section will be taken out. If permission cannot be secured, all the way to the end, it's completely taken out.
Okay.
And a statement will be made, a parent or guardian must be contacted prior to transporting the student home. Period.
So, I don't wanna overcomplicate
No,
this,
you're
but
fine.
I also have thoughts of, like, I can't get a hold of the parent.
Yep.
But Tia Linda is listed as an emergency contact and I got a hold of her. maybe some verbiage about like then what's the school's responsibility to continue to contact the parent or let the parent know that, you know, Aunt Linda's coming to get your kid or took the kid or.
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about, well, what if they were able to get in hold of a emergency contact instead of a parent?
Mhm.
And we weren't comfortable letting that be okay to allow them to transport because the feedback we're getting from administration is you're always able to get a hold of a parent.
Okay, so then that would, to me, make that second bullet.
Right, so we would still,
Wait,
yeah,
what's
go
the- can
ahead,
I
we would
just
still,
explain?
yep.
Talk to this one, I'm sorry. So what typically will happen is administrators will exhaust the emergency contact and they will just say, Ms. Finlayson, you're listed as an emergency contact for Shannon Miller. Can you please contact her guardian and have them call the school as soon as possible? She needs a ride home. That has happened many times throughout our administrators. So they will do that. But the part where Jennifer speaks to that we're not comfortable allowing an emergency contact for us to drop a student at an emergency contact without the permission of a parent is a lot of times parents don't update some of these emergency contacts. And so therefore, they may no longer be talking to Aunt Linda.
Right.
And there's a bad personal issue there. So that's where we felt that it wasn't right for us just to say that we could drop them at an emergency contact listed.
So I wasn't thinking drop them at the emergency contact. To me, this reads that we're gonna let that emergency contact come get the kid.
We do do that.
And we have done
Yeah,
that
we
if
do do
parents have given us permission.
If they're an emergency contact and the parents give us permission for the emergency, that's one,
Oh,
those are
sure,
one of
if
the
we get a
people.
hold of the
Yeah,
parent and they
correct,
say, oh, yes,
Yeah,
Tia Linda can go get, okay. But if we can't get a hold of the parent and the emergency contact says, I'm right down the block, I can swing by and pick up Shannon, we would say,
a parent or guardian must be contacted prior to any student being transported.
okay,
This is administration transporting students. This isn't emergency contacts
okay.
transporting students.
So then the point of calling the emergency contacts is to have them help us get a hold of the parent?
Yes.
I don't wanna limit it only to they only contact the parent or guardian. The parent and guardian.
No, I
is not
understand,
gonna-
that second bullet just reads confusing when you're saying the emergency contacts are being called to secure transportation. It just leads me to believe that then they're gonna be transporting the kid.
Okay,
So if like to secure contact with the parents.
Yep.
Would read better. Or exhaust,
Yep, that-
whatever.
Yep. all emergency contacts must be called to secure contact with the parents prior to the student being transported by administration.
Yes.
The only thing you might wanna add at the beginning is if parent cannot be reached. All emergency contacts.
If parents cannot be reached, they're not going to be transporting the student.
Gotcha.
So then, does that make the fourth bullet, contact must be made? The second half of that one?
Right.
Like, cause we're saying we have to make contact with them, so
Yeah,
then,
transportation, yep.
The only question I have is, do we need to have any kind of a thing in our policy as to how we handle things if there happens to be an accident while driving a student? Or is that somewhere else?
That would not be put into, this is, yeah, so we're just tying this. This is an exhibit specifically to our policy on,
On transport?
yes, so I can do a little more digging on a like if
We need a policy for
the next
what
time we're
steps are to be
yeah.
taken if an accident occurs.
else related.
Anybody have any other questions? So are we all comfortable with it as is amended?
Thank you for letting us.
Well, that's part of the process. I mean, you
Thank you
know.
for bringing your
Yeah.
experts that are out there in the field living
Yes.
it.
Yep, no problem. And lastly, we have policy 7:15, student and family privacy rights. This policy was actually approved during the September 27th Board of Education meeting. The policy is currently under a 30-day display. After approval, suggestion was for us to consider was changing the 48-hour parent to view the survey to a 72-hour period of time. So if the PPA committee agrees with this recommendation of changing the 48 hours to 72 hours, what I will do is I will make this change in the policy and it will go back to the board on Monday for approval, and then it will be under a new 30-day display. If you are not in agreement with the 72 hours and you want to leave it at a 48 hour, then it will stay 48 hours and it will still go to the board for discussion on Monday. So I am looking for a recommendation on either leaving it 48 hours or changing it to 72 hours.
So can I ask to just walk through the only for certain surveys, not every survey we ever give, right? The ones that meet those requirements as listed. When notification goes to the parent, the survey would be attached to that email notification.
Right.
So I'm gonna make up a timeline. The principal sends that 8 AM Monday. The way it currently is listed, families would have till 8 AM Wednesday to say, to opt in or opt out.
Yeah.
So if the building principal's planning at 9 o'clock on Wednesday is when kids are gonna partake in that, that's the window that parents have. So what's being proposed is, in that scenario, if it went out 8 AM Monday, it could not be presented to students until then Thursday.
72-hour period or 48-hour period, whichever
Yeah.
period you want. Yes, that would be correct.
Is there pluses or what are the pluses and minuses as far as staff is concerned to one or the other?
There's not. There really isn't a plus or minus. It is, I think it's more of maybe respecting the time of our parents, like, you know,
Yeah.
is 48 hours more reasonable over 72 hours?
Yeah.
It really has no impact on us, getting the surveys out. We just have to be mindful of it, because if a survey has its timeliness, and there is timeliness, we need to be mindful to add 48 or 72 hours
To the rollout.
to the roll, yeah, to the rollout.
Yeah.
So that's really all it is.
I'm okay with the 72 hours, but I don't want staff to feel pressured to have to give a reminder. So
No.
if after 48 hours, they've only received one parent response and nobody else's, I don't want staff to have that pressure that they feel like, oh, maybe I need to send another reminder that they only have 24 more hours to get back to me. That's
That's a great point.
putting a lot of pressure on staff. So I'm okay with extending it to 72, I just,
Yep.
I want it to be that there's one notice, period.
Yeah, so there's no reference to any other notice than the one notice in the policy. It is just one time, and it's 48 or 72. If it's 72, that's it. There is not another layer to notification prior to students getting it.
I'm fine with the 72, because I'm that parent that I might see it right away, and then I lose track of time, or think, wait, I gotta talk to dad first, and then I realize, oh no, I never responded.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Okay, so what we'll do here is the PPA.
All right. Hello and good evening, everyone. This is the District 202 Curriculum and Technology Committee meeting for Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. Present is Dr. Kathy Baxter and Teresa Howard Collins and myself representing the committee. And I will turn it over to you, Dr. Wood.
Sure. Good evening. We have 5 information items this evening. We have a presentation from our high school principals. Our student ambassadors are here from our high school as well to provide some feedback on the year for us. We have a presentation on our gifted and honors program, and then we just give a brief overview on achievement. And so, Russ, I'm trying to share the screen here. It's not sharing. Try it again. So really, we're going to start with our high school principals. For us to give a presentation, our student ambassadors really, what you'll see from our principals is they give things based on data, some of the initiatives that are there. Our student ambassadors provide some qualitative feedback related to this, how everything is going for us. And so I'm going to turn it over to you guys right now, and I think it's, who's next? Mr. Yanello? There we go.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for having the high school principals here. Welcome to our student ambassadors. We're here tonight, all 4 of us, to present our school improvement plan. We have a short PowerPoint for you. Each one of us is going to share a couple slides and give you some information. If you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to ask. So, if you would, go to that next slide. So basically, this is a snapshot of our student life and what's going on, some characteristics that are going on in our district high schools. To the left, you'll see a snapshot of our demographics, which, as everyone knows, in the last 10 to 15 years has changed considerably in District 202 and will continue to do so. That's just a current snapshot from 2021 school year. In addition to the chart to the right, just some of our plain flat out data that we have. Our graduation rate over the last 4 years, it's declined a little bit in the last 2 years to that 93 percentile. We're certainly going to work to get that back up to the 95 percentile, if not higher. Last 2 years have been somewhat difficult year in terms of that graduation rate. The attendance rate goes right hand in hand with the graduation rate. And we've been consistent at that 94%, and then last year got to 93%. If you see in the right-hand column, there's some information not posted until October 29th. That's just because the data for the new school report card from the state of Illinois will not be out, and so that'll be getting. So at that point, it'll be updated to have the last year's information as well. Ninth grade on track. Basically defined of keeping a ninth grader on track is a freshman needs to pass 5 or more classes to be considered on track, and they cannot fail 1 or more core curriculum classes, math, English, science. It's critical for us to have things in place to keep our freshmen successful. Data has shown throughout the state, throughout the country, if freshmen are successful, they're more than likely to be at school and to graduate from school. If they get behind that freshman year, it's a lot more difficult to keep them on track and to get them through. So a lot of focus is placed on the ninth grade on track. Our low income population has stayed pretty consistent in the last 4 years, 25%. Tile, IEPs for our special education students is slightly increasing as the years have went in the last 4 years. I would expect that this year it would tick up again a little bit more. That's what we've been seeing. Our 504 student accommodations that we provide students, we've seen a pretty big increase over the last 4 years across the district at all 4 high schools. Students having various accommodations to assist them with their academics. Our EL, our English language learners, that population has certainly increased. We've added staffing in that area and programs in that area to assist students in the English language learner category. Homeless population, pretty consistent in terms of right around 1%, if not less. And then, for whatever reason, in the community of Plainfield, since we grow so fast, our mobility rate has increased quite a bit in the last 4 years. And I would anticipate with real estate kind of looking the way it is right now to continue to increase this year. We've almost doubled the mobility. That's students moving in and out of our district, not just one way, but both ways in terms of changing school district. So that's a snapshot of where we're at in terms of our demographics, and then the last 4 years in the other counties. So with that, we'll turn it over to Joel Ryan.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you again for the opportunity. Like Bob said, ambassadors, thanks for being here tonight too to represent your school. Thanks for being awesome for Plainfield East and our school as well. Like Bob was talking about, student life, and a huge proponent and a component of a student life in the high school are activities, clubs, and athletics. I was talking to Dr. Averill the other day, and we were talking about how sometimes successful fall seasons has a jolt of energy that just kind of lights up the fall semester for the entire school. And it's so true. On top of students being back full time, the successes that you experience in the fall also raises that bar a little bit as well. 202 schools offer more than 32 IHSA endorsed sports for both boys and girls. And as you can see the pie chart on the left, you have the number of participants per color in athletics per school. So if you take those numbers and you put it in the grand scheme of things, almost 50% of the students are participating in a sport at the high school level, which is absolutely amazing and awesome experience for kids, and as well as our coaches. And a little plug for our coaches, they have been sensational and reach out and trying to get kids involved, especially with the year that they had last year where opportunities were taken away. Keeping kids involved, whether it's for social emotional supports or needs, that outreach that they have continued throughout this time has been just invaluable. Athletic accomplishments, Will County in itself is probably second to none in terms of athletic success. And for 202, and as you can see on the board in 2020, 2021, it doesn't change that. You can see the state qualifiers, regional championships, conference championships, and then baseball championship for Plainfield East last year, which was an awesome jolt for our school community, and 202 in general. But if you take that and put that into perspective, Plainfield North in 2018 won the baseball championship at 4A as well. So 2 of the last 3 4A state champions have come from Plainfield, which is awesome. The next slide, please. Activities and clubs. The 1920 school year, again, kind of cut short, which put things into motion for the 2020-21 school year. And I know that there were clubs and outreaches that we had and that we have continued, whether it was student council in all 4 schools or some other various activities that continued on in a remote setting. This year, getting back into it and talking with the building principals and talking with our student leaders and our student moderators, numbers are through the roof in participation. Kids are craving involvement. Kids are craving being a part of it. And it's great. We've had, in our building specifically, and I know for the others as well, our activities directors are working really, really hard to find sponsors in the building for new clubs that want to be a part of it as well. The clubs and activities component has also taken a very different turn in the sponsorship through the IHSA. So clubs and activities are growing exponentially throughout the entire high school community throughout the state. Our conference meetings, they're going through and they're being pulled from our buildings because there are so many different components and different layers that our activity directors and our sponsors are now being brought into, whether it's like gaming or leadership programs and things like that. So it is very, very big and growing very, very quickly. But aside from that, you can see on the bottom, charities that the clubs and sponsors also donate and go to and work with to help support the community, whether it's Feed My Starving Children, Cinderella's Closet, diabetes awareness, just to name a few. It's great to be back, I will tell you that, and I think the kids are benefiting from it. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Quebec.
My experience, obviously, I don't know if the shortest, I think, and somewhat self-explanatory. Regarding our AP exams, of the many thousands of things that we do around here that I think are good, this ranks in team photo. As a whole, our AP program is pretty strong. We have numerous kids take it, with the exception of last year, a totally anomaly. You guys have talked about it for 18 months now, you don't want to talk about it anymore. But prior to that, our scores are, and our numbers for our tests are actually quite strong. In a district our size, diversity that we have roughly about 68% of our kids, not coming last year. Prior to that, about 68% of our kids take an AP test. So for a school that does a mandate or a district that does a mandate, it's actually quite high. So, and it really, honestly, you got to give some props to CNI, Dr. Dan, Dr. Brown, who obviously support a lot of our AP teachers, who, I mean, they do all the right. kind of get, to talk about it here, but that's where the rubber meets the road. A lot of our AP teachers working hard with kids, doing our AP Summer Institute. So we get a lot of extra training for our AP teachers. So that's why that number's honestly that high. Jumping over to the AP Scholars, the number has decreased a little bit. Again, not looking at this past year, but 3 previous years, and part of that has to do with our rhetoric program. With the growth, or I think not rhetoric program, our dual credit program, which one of those is rhetoric. Mr. Jarrett is going to talk about that in a moment, but I don't want to steal his thunder. But I will say that, well, maybe I will. But I will say that, our kids are getting numerous opportunities to get dual credit, which not only saves them money, obviously makes them more competitive, if they're applying to college, et cetera, et cetera. The next slide, obviously, is last year's ACT or SAT data. We are down about 34 points district-wide compared to where we were the previous year. Again, we like to think that this is an anomaly with COVID. If it was 5 years ago, I could have told you what our scores were going to be within probably 3 or 4 points. I was a C&I guy. This is what I did. I'm like, there's no way I can tell you what we're going to do next year, other than I assume we're going to be higher. I just don't know where. With some of the, I don't want to say, some of our students who struggled, we don't know where they're exactly. Well, some of them are still struggling. So we're not quite where we want to be. But as a whole, I think all of our schools were lower than we were in previous years. But again, I like to think through some of our interventions that we're utilizing in these buildings. Hopefully we'll be able to get that number up within 2, hopefully this year. But next year we should hopefully get back into where we were previously. So that's it. Let's get ready for questions. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, welcome. Thank you for being here. Josh, good seeing you as always, buddy. Dual credit. You can see by those slides there is a significant increase going from 18-19 to 19-20. Simple answer is that our kids are being offered more classes. Just to give you an example of some of those classes, in 19-20 we added a math class 128, which is stats, a 138, which is a pre-calc 1, a 139, which is a pre-calc 2, and a 107, which is exploring the teaching profession from the University of St. Francis. And then in 2020-21, we offered biology 125. So what we're offering the kids are eating it up. And the other reasons why I think that we're seeing an increase in dual credit is if they get a C, it's a guaranteed college credit. Whereas AP, you have to take the test and get the appropriate score to get that credit. We're also, I think, doing a better job of educating kids and parents on why to take them. We've saved well over hundreds of thousands of dollars for our families already by offering kids dual credit. And I look forward to working with other universities. Dr. Dan does a good job of getting that out and giving us and offering us opportunities to give to our kids and families. Next slide, please. The last slide that I have really focuses on things that we're doing now, but also things we want to continue to do down the road. So if you look at the attention for our student services, or excuse me, attention for student staff social emotional needs, it's no secret that it's been a challenging last year and even going into this year. Students need to be supported emotionally and socially. We have, in the process in the last few weeks and still currently doing our SOS, which is our signs of suicide. We're going to be starting our panorama survey to gauge our social emotional well-being of our kids. We need to continue to look for ways to support them in student services and in the hallways and throughout the day for our kids in all 4 of our high schools. Probably more than ever, our staff has also needed to be addressed socially, and emotionally. We have a wonderful employee assistance program in the district. I think we need to start utilizing that more, offering those for our staff when they're in need. But also we're kind of thinking out of the box and doing things that are more mindfulness, potentially on a short time frame during an institute day, and getting staff some of the break and the support and the stress relieving that they need to perform in the classroom for their kids. The next one would be integration of digital technology. The one positive that has come from the COVID nightmare is that all of these kids have laptops in their hands. With that, it comes challenges. How to utilize them effectively. So I think the one thing that has been a blessing this year was the ability to hire a tech coach at each of the 4 high schools. I know that they've been utilized. I know that we've focused a lot on the beginning of the school year with integration of Google changeover with Gmail, Google Calendar, and Google Meet. We've done some training so staff is up to date and understands how to utilize those effectively, which is great to teach in the classroom, but also teach our kids. And sometimes our kids are teaching us how to use those things because they're a little bit more tech savvy. Track and improve freshmen on track. You can see on our last slide or earlier that we were moving in the right direction for our, I think it was 93 to 97 for freshmen on track. I think all 4 high schools do a nice job of mentoring the kids. Specifically, every single one of us has something related to Link Crew, which is a mentoring with our upperclassmen and our lowerclassmen to hopefully set the standard on academics and mentoring them to the building for behavior. I know that we all do tutoring. I know that we all offer before, after school, potentially tutoring in the media center with peer tutoring. We have opportunity for kids that are struggling and failing a course to take Ingenuity, potentially second semester over the summer, which then gives them and sets them up for the ability to be caught up with credits as they enter their sophomore year, which is really important for them to be on track. Professional development. That's a big one. And honestly, I think that's one of the things that we really continue to focus on and how we provide appropriate professional development for our staff. Whether it's instructional based, whether it's management, or whether it's other things that are going to make them better in the classroom for instruction or just relating to kids. And we continue to look for those opportunities, whether it's through institute days or sending staff with professional development money to get those trainings. The other thing that's been an initiative in the last few years across the districts is our Cultural Competency Committee. I think that's important to continue in the direction of educating students, staff, and our community on the direction we want to go with cultural competency. But also, I think it goes into the classroom, coming up with ways that we can put our teachers in position to have scenario-based information when situations arise in the classroom, how to talk about certain things, certain topics. I think that's another direction we still continue to need to go. Explore opportunities for students and staff to increase dual credit. As you can see in the last slide, our dual credit numbers are off the charts in the last 2 years. Continue to work with Dr. Dan working with JGC, St. Francis, and other universities to figure out how we can get more opportunities for our kids to save them money, prepare them for the next level, and also get through high school at the same time. The other thing that's a challenge with dual credit is staff is put in a position, they have to have the criteria to teach the class. They have to have a master's in the content, they have to have a master's in general and 18 hours in the content, or they need to be in some type of we'll call it a probationary period to meet one of those 2 criteria. So I think the struggle sometimes is how do we motivate staff to want to get into that position to teach a dual credit class. And there are dual credit classes offered, of course, at each Fort High School, but I think each of us have a different platform of who teaches what based on who's eligible to do it. So I might be able to offer a couple classes that East does, and Joe might be able to offer a couple classes that I don't. The more certification we can get our staff, the more it's going to benefit our kids. That's something to definitely think about and move and plan for down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Draper. We do have another thing we want to talk about a little bit and a little bit related to high school, but I just wanted, if you guys have any questions for our principals, we want to hear from our ambassadors as far as, how the year has gone, challenges. You see this data really for the first time, how do you react? And then probably the one question that we have prompted them with is use of the computers. We invested heavily in the technology, so how is that going? So maybe if we could just start with that and then we could have a conversation around some of the data. So tell us about the integration of the computers. Our goal and out of our digital department, Ms. Weed, is really related to what's the perfect blend of using the computer and not using the computer. So how's it going with the computers, and tell us about the year.
Okay, I'll start, I guess.
Can you introduce yourself
Yeah.
and your school before you,
Okay, so I'm Brianna Villalobos. I'm from Plainfield South, and I'm a senior. So I think that, I guess, combining the technology and with our school and academics and everything is really great, especially this year that we're in person and not just on Zoom 24/7 at school. I think it's great that we can use like the computers in every class. for myself, we've been using them in every class, and I think it's a great resource that every kid that can use, and every teacher is using it in a different way. So I think it's good sometimes, not all the time, because it's a lot of different applications that we're using, and so it can kind of get confusing. But I think it's a really good resource.
I'm Lydia Magomenius. I'm from Plainfield Central. I really like having the computers because I'm able to look back at the work we've done for the day, or like a lot of teachers have like put the resources for the class into the Google Classroom. So you can look back on the PowerPoint from the notes for the day, and if you missed anything, you could look over it. The only thing that I see as like an issue with the technology is like the testing, because I'm used to doing paper testing, and on computers testing is so much, it's like a completely different format, and it's just a lot more difficult.
I'm McKenzie Garrett. I'm from Plainfield East. I'm a senior. I do agree with what both of them said. I like having the resources from class to look back on. But I've noticed a lot with myself and a lot of my friends that there's almost been like a lack of motivation involved with computers. So because all the work is there already, and because it's like you have all the answers, you feel like you can push it off and push it off and push it off. But it's hard to stay on top of it. I think for me at least, having like a paper given to me being like, hey, this has to be turned in now, I feel like that's more of like a strict schedule for me. And a lot of people that I've talked to, everybody is different, but I feel like it being there and it just the screen saying this is turned in late, I feel like it's not the same as a teacher saying, hey, you need to get this done, your grade's slipping.
So I'm Joshua Smith. I'm from Plainfield North, and I think computers are honestly like incredible for the learning environment because I'm able to have the flexibility to go home and finish assignments that I had at school without having to carry textbooks and a bunch of different resources, and I have it all at my fingertips constantly. So I can be really in any place and have my books, I can have all my papers, and I know exactly when they're due. And I usually have more time to do them now because I have until midnight most of the time, because you see a lot of teachers, they can do it midnight. Of course, I don't support staying up super late, but sometimes I gotta stay up a little bit late to squeeze some assignments in. But it gives me the flexibility to do that. And another thing that I think is a really big thing to acknowledge is the fact that in the modern world, especially like in the modern work environment, computers are so heavily utilized. And a lot of students come out of high school without a basic understanding of computers, and they have a really hard time using things like Excel and Word and PowerPoint. But when we're in school, when we have computers, we get a lot of hands-on experience over these 4 years of using computers and making PowerPoint presentations and writing emails, communicating efficiently with others. And I think those are some incredibly important skills that we need to learn in school that we can use to better ourselves and have more opportunities later down the line.
Could you share, there was like one course, or there was something that you guys had talked about, like paper pencil, you thought was beneficial, or it was more difficult on the computer?
Math is a lot easier in paper and pencil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because writing out work, even like using a stylus on a computer is difficult. It just looks bad. So paper and pencil is a lot easier for me and a lot of other students in my classes. So.
Yeah. Last year when we had to take the math test online, we had to show our work on the computer. So, I mean, you can either type it out, but trying to type out square roots and all that stuff is super hard. So even drawing it on there like yourself, it just gets really messy. So I feel like even in some math classes, they're still doing that only on computers. And I feel like for certain classes, things need to be done on paper like math, just so you can have all your work in your own handwriting, like neat and able to read, especially the teachers as well, because it's hard for them.
Questions for our principals so far, and we have other things, other prompts and other pieces, but I don't know if there's any piece of data that caught your eye, any questions that people had come up with.
Kathy, Teresa?
I had two questions actually. I know with mobility, it used to be a reflection of only what happened between August and June. It didn't matter if they moved Brown over the summer, that wasn't part of the statistics for mobility. Is that still true for this?
I don't know the answer to that.
Great question, Kathy.
So Kathy, we could look into that, but I would say yes, it's checked during the enrollment period because it's in the school during the registration period, which is the school year.
Which I think, blows people away when they realize that that doesn't even involve what happens over the summer.
It's just who registered and who doesn't come back the following year, they have to register.
You also talked about the increase in the number of 504s, and I was curious when you said that, if that is because more students are coming in with 504s, or are you actually having to write more at the high school level?
I think the answer is yes. More kids obviously coming in with 504 to begin with. We've seen an increase in summer anxiety, 504, that lead to different uses. And I think that's probably where the see a little growth in there. But also at the same time, I think we're also identifying kids with needs that we may not have done, 10 years ago. So I think that's good for, people identifying students who are struggling.
So our ambassadors, this is our second cohort of ambassadors that we've had through this. We are presenting at the III conference in Chicago in a month for that, but we're continuing to grow. And our short-term goal is actually to add more ambassadors. We would say that, and really the balance between junior and senior. So we have like a senior, junior for the transition. We realized last year, Brianna was very valuable. I mean, you guys have been through that, but now we need to bring some more along. And then the other part of it is they do have like a common goal and a project that we do every single year. For example, past examples we've had are computer rental, where we were, before we had all the computers, the ambassadors came up with the idea to rent computers to kids who didn't have them. And so we did that program also. And then even the Link crew, each school has kind of different versions of it and different names, but this group really, not this one, but the one previous, coordinated some things to make sure that happened. And there's another other list of items. But in December, we'll come back with some, kind of our project, so to speak, with the group as we work through that. But share with us how the year is going.
I'll start again. So far, at least for myself and what I've seen from others, the year is going really great, especially in the beginning. And when we were first talking with the principals about homecoming week, that it really brought like the community together and like all the schools together, and everybody was really participating. So it was really nice to see how like every student, like from freshman all the way to senior year, they were all getting involved and like excited just to be in school again. And I hope that continues throughout the school year, because it really does just like uplift like the environment and everybody there. And so I'm hoping that continues.
Like as Brianna said, like everyone wants to get involved, and everyone's like not like super excited to be at school, but excited to be at school instead of on Zoom. And I feel like the one thing I'm seeing is that like people are transitioning back into the learning environment instead of doing Zooms. Like it was hard to transition into like remote learning, but like I see like there's an equally hard transition back into in-person learning.
I think one of the big things about the high school experience is the social aspect and getting to meet people and really explore yourself in terms of learning and academics. And those things were kind of absent last year, at least to me. It felt a lot different staring at a computer screen and not really being able to interact with teachers the same way and the students around me, and really feeling the same, like being able to absorb content the same way. So I think this year is going incredibly well because people are really happy to be back in the building, and people are realizing what they didn't have before, or like what they had before and what they didn't have last year. And being back and being part of clubs and being more involved in your high school has been something I've seen a lot, just because people are realizing how many opportunities they have to express themselves and to meet others, and how they didn't have that before. Now they don't explore that.
Yeah, I've Sorry, I can't talk. I've seen pretty good things coming out of this year so far. I think connections have been a lot better within my senior class, at least. I feel like everybody's gotten along really well and everyone's just really happy to see each other. And I feel like we've also started to connect with the underclassmen. Like, I always just see freshmen and seniors talking in the hallway, and that has never really happened throughout my high school experience. So that's really cool to see. And like, our homecoming had a huge turnout. All of our sporting events, like all the way from football games, which are more expected, to there's even people going to cross country meets this year, which is really cool to see. I think everybody's just really excited to be together and supporting each other.
What challenges, and you talked about the transition coming back. I think our adults have actually had a harder time, frankly, than the students, both to the mask and the transition back. Just from everything that we've heard, it's just difficult. But tell us what we could improve upon, or reflections on the year for things to get better.
I think time management has been a struggle for a lot of people, teachers and students, because for me at least, going from being at home 100% of the time, you have a lot of free time, to now I'm jumping back into things. I'm super involved at school. I'm having a tough time learning how to manage my sports, my involvement, like my clubs, and all my schoolwork. So I think I'm just trying to pile everything together right now, and I need to figure out a schedule. And I think that's something a lot of other students are struggling with. And I think it's all just, I'm so excited to be back and I just want to do everything. But I think we also need to learn how to take a step back and reflect on what we're putting on ourselves.
I completely agree with you about how like people need more of like structure, I guess, because last year with the whole like assignments and things like that, there wasn't really any authority figure like telling you like you need to get this done. And now going back into school, I see like a lot of kids aren't doing their work, and I guess they're not doing their work. But I mean, the teachers are getting on top of them, and I think like students are finally realizing like, okay, we're like fully back into school, like we need to get things done, and it's becoming more of a priority now. But in the beginning, I did see like a lot of students just like slacking off and thinking like it was like last year, and like you're just sitting in your bed, like kind of listening to a podcast.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, it felt even more optional than it did last year. But I see that it's like now, even like we're almost halfway through the year, like we're actually transitioning better into like in-person learning. We just need to get there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was like the teachers just expected us to be able to just be fully back at school. Remember, this is how it is. We just needed that transition period, and I think we are starting to get there again.
One of the things, just so you're aware, is last year we waived our final exams at the high school level. And the purpose really was to maximize instructional time for that, and just in that environment, we didn't think it was fair to our children with that. We've been asked about that, the finals for this year. Our language has been, we're going to do the finals. At the same time, we are considering that and not giving those, and I just want to, our recommendation from our high schools is not give finals this year, one more year, and then revisit, look at next year, maybe a long-term plan for that, but I don't want to speak for it. Yeah. And I'll let Mr. Draper speak.
Yeah, and thank you. I really am speaking for the four of us. We've had several conversations since school started this year. And we really, the word unprecedented is something that I'm tired of saying, so I'm not going to say it. But I will say that we do find ourselves in some uncharted waters this year with coming back into the building from what we were dealing with from last year. The kids had a shortened curriculum time. The kids were not in front of teachers. And what that's done is it's forced us to do some different things to start the year. We've been telling our kids, we've been telling our staff, which is then getting to our parents, that we need to be flexible. We need to work with kids. We need to work with kids that are struggling. We need to think about things that are going on in their personal lives at home and how it's impacted them, whether it's COVID related or not. We've been, in a sense, forcing kids out of the building due to COVID protocol with quarantine. Not that we want to, but they're put in positions where they're at home for potentially 7 to 10 days, and they're
Classes every day, every school. But that teacher would be responsible for the remote at that school. And so we have about half of those positions filled. I'll put an update in the school, in the board update as well around this, but I did want to give feedback to the board that we've made progress related to that. A lot of credit to our directors for the work they've done and A&P for what they've done. So we'll be able to provide you probably a more substantial update really in 2 weeks as we fill those other positions. So that's the first.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. That's the first piece of it. The other is the achievement. You know, typically September, we give the achievement update. You had heard from our principals that we had some of those, as we had shared last month, the October 29th, there were different deadlines for that. So our data, we thought ELL data access was going to be accurate, and we actually got a report it wasn't. So really, we aren't sure. We really don't want to present the data publicly unless it's final. We just think that it's just not, so we can continue to we'll put things in the update for preliminary so you guys are informed along the way. And then once it is final, we will bring it here again. Okay. Next, we have a presentation. I'm going to try to, all right. Am I on the right deal there, Russell?
Good. You're not presenting. You need to present.
Oh, I thought I was. No. Okay, let's see. So we have an update related to our Gifted and Talented program. Our directors are going to talk about this. All right, so Tammy, so just one thing on Gifted and Talented program, we are very proud of our Gifted and Honors program. I will tell you that in this district. There was a lot of thought that went into the design of our program. There are some struggles, but at the same time, these directors have done a great job. And Joan Woolwine at the elementary level, I really want to recognize Joan for if you know her or don't know her. It was a struggle for us at the elementary. We believe we have a viable, gifted, accelerated honors program now that every family will know and expect. We know what they're going to get, where that wasn't always the case. And it's sustainable over time. That's the other piece, and we can get into that. So just wanted to recognize those folks, and I'm going to try to
So our Gifted and Honors program does start in 3rd grade, and it is a program that we've looked very closely to make sure we're in compliance with school code requirements for a program, but also aligned to the National Association for Gifted Children recommendations and Illinois Association for Gifted. We're going to go over just a couple of things in school code because you will see that's our identification process alignment to school code requirements. So for school code, it does require us to have a program for children that not so much requires, but a program for remarkable high levels of accomplishment when compared with other children or youth their age. A child can be considered gifted and talented in any area of aptitude, and specifically in language arts and math, by scoring in the top 5% locally. Our program is accelerated curriculum in math and ELA, so we do align to the recommendation of school code here. We also have the top 5%, but in our district we do 10% because locally that are the students we've identified as being successful in the program are in the top 10%. So we do meet school code. It also requires multiple assessments be used to identify gifted and talented children. We do use multiple assessments. It can include standardized achievement, ability measures, other district assessments, and again, the emphasis is on language arts and math, and so our assessments do align to those areas. So for Gifted and Honors K-8, for ELA and math, we look at multiple assessments for our programming, including multiple measures, ability testing, we do use the OSAT. We use achievement, iReady Math, and reading. 3 measures, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year for each of those areas. So elementary, we identify the top 10%, middle school goes to about the top 20%. And then we also have a provision for accelerated placement. That is a new school code that says in addition to your gifted and talented, you do have to consider students that showing readiness for accelerated placement. So we do have testing in place for that. So if a student hasn't qualified for gifted and honors, we will take a look at their complete learning profile to see if they're ready for accelerated placement. High school is open enrollment, so that's self-selected by the student. So for acceleration, when we talk about, well, what about kids who didn't qualify for gifted and honors? What's accelerated placement look like? Typically, this is early entrance to kindergarten. Because we have honors starting in 3rd grade, most of the requests we get for accelerated placement are in kindergarten. We do have a couple families for 1st grade that are move-ins, but generally it is the very young students before acceleration starts. So again, we can use any of the assessments. We can use OLSAT, Achievement, iReady Math. We can use state assessments. If they test 4 or 5 on an IAR assessment, we will use that. We can also look at their district outcomes if they're in district to see how they're doing on those, or any comparative assessments if they're moving into our district. Again, we use iReady, but we can look at MAP or STAR or another nationally normed assessment. And then we do have appeals. Anybody can appeal. We do start identifying students in 3rd grade, but we look at students every year to see how they're doing. So again, I could reach out to a school could reach out to me, a parent could reach out to us and request consideration. So for our data for the 2021 school year, in the green, you'll see our enrollment. In the blue, you will see our gifted population. So you can see for our gifted population in any of the subgroups, for the total number of gifted, that percentage is the number for that subgroup. So our total enrollment, for example, for Hispanic or Latino is 23% of our district population. From our gifted population, for all the students qualifying at the elementary level 3rd through 5th, it is 10%. And then you can see that for each of those groups.
And so just another tie-in is the students are identified in 3rd grade. Actually, what happens is, and we're very strict on that requirement to get in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and why we think that's important. But this is a percentage of the gifted program, right? And this is a percentage of the district enrollment. And so really what we would hope is, the goal is that these match up, right? If this is 23%, that's 23%. That's kind of the end goal, and what you'll see is we make progress as we continue through the years.
And I'll just add to that. So that is what you're going to see by high school. You are going to see that increase in every group. One of the reasons being is that in the early years, and one of the reasons we keep it so tight, is students need time to get to the point where they're ready for acceleration. Not all students are ready at the same time. So we do want to give that opportunity to students whenever they're ready. We don't exclude any students from testing. We test all of our students in our district. So everyone is considered. And whenever a student is ready, we do want to give those opportunities with the goal, for sure, by high school, they are ready for the accelerated honors, AP, or even dual credit.
So if we transition to the middle school slide, what you'll start to see is the trend that Tammy just brought to light is the goal is that you have both the blue and the green, the honors and the district-wide enrollment, that you have both of those are equal in their level. And what you're starting to see is that data is showing, apart from the one category, that data is showing that they're starting to more closely reflect each other. At the middle school level, it is not as tight as at the elementary school level. So at the elementary school level, you're looking at about 10% of the students. When the students come to middle school, we have a number of opportunities for students to be engaged in accelerated placement, whether that's Algebra 1 Honors. Students
students who are earning high school credit. We have many of our accelerated students in that classroom for Spanish. Also, our language arts program has honors in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade also. This past summer, we worked with our building principals to identify students who were coming from 5th grade to 6th grade who perhaps in the past hadn't had experience in the honors program in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, and transitioned some of those students into 6th grade honors math. And we talked a little bit a few meetings ago about that program and how we supported students over the summer. So at the middle school level, what you'll start to see is with all of our groups, all of our population, we're starting to see a more equal balance between enrollment and placement and honors. And the whole goal at the middle school level is to extend the net of students that have the opportunity to take accelerated classes, because when they do get to high school, it is open enrollment. So if we do have students that are interested in going into those accelerated programs at the high school level, we start to give them the opportunities prior to high school. So that's where we are at the middle school level.
And our high school honors and AP levels, you can see that they do close the gap a little bit more, as suggested earlier. The numbers are a little tighter. These numbers specifically include the kids that take honors and the kids that take AP, but there's another population of kids that also take dual credit that would be considered in this. There's a data point on the school report card that will, when the data comes out, that includes the comparison of how many kids are actually taking AP classes and how many kids are taking dual credit classes. So those kids can kind of be added to these numbers and even make them better, because we know that from the state data in the past that more ELL kids and students with IEPs take dual credit classes in addition to. They might not take the AP classes, but they do feel like they're confident and they want to get a jump on college. And there's a variety of reasons why a kid takes a dual credit class, but we do see that consistent in the data of the state that more ELL and special ed students take advantage of dual credit classes. So, yeah. But at the high school level, it's open enrollment, and kids can challenge themselves as much and to what extent they want to.
So we also have an acceleration committee. This committee meets every few years to review our programming and data. It consists of administrators and honors teachers. We do review research and we do review any current research. We looked at early entrance to kindergarten and grade level acceleration, and we did look at the data from students being early entrance to see how they were doing longitudinally. And we do look at grade level acceleration, students who didn't qualify for gifted honors but did qualify for acceleration, to make sure that they were doing okay as well. And that would inform our programming as well. The longitudinal data, we look at national data and we do look at our district data. And then we do also, any recommendations the committees bring or have, we bring it back to the levels and get input from the principals as well. And so their recommendations for is identification, the data we use and how we identify students, and also for programming. And then we also have a parent advisory committee. All three of us work together to host those. We do it once or twice a year, depending on what we have to present. And sometimes we host the meeting once a year with parent opportunities the second week. So, but those are, like I said, every year. We do share with this parent committee the research and the program review and any recommendations. And we do look for their updates and feedbacks and questions as well. And then we do ask them what parent opportunities they would like, and we look to provide those as well.
So any questions related to our gifted honors program or what was presented this evening, or things that?
Questions?
And this is a group of students that have really needed a lot of support for social emotional. And I'm just wondering, how does that fit into your picture here?
All of our teachers are trained. They go through a gifted education seminar. Actually, we're just hosting one in November for how to meet the needs of high ability learners. So the teachers are trained on how to engage students, how to support them, including that SEO.
I think the other to add to that is, that really highlights the importance of the communication with the family, engaging the parents in those conversations and in those decisions, because while we have data points on a student, having conversations with the parents and also involving the students in the conversation, obviously depending on their age, really helps to drive that decision. We have had situations where students have been accelerated and in conversations with families, social emotional conversations and social emotional concerns have changed the recommendation, with it being a long-term recommendation, like a goal for the future, but not for this year. So I think the importance of engaging the families in the decision and in the conversation is imperative for the student to be successful.
And I would say too, in addition to the schools working closely with parents and families that need extra support or students who need extra support, our parent committee did ask for training a couple of years ago, and we did bring a speaker in to speak to the families. We opened it up to everybody. Everybody was invited that wanted to. It was very well attended.
And I will say at the high school level, I'll echo what Paul was saying. Our counselors work very closely with their families. We have that open enrollment process, but there are times where the school or the teacher will say, this may be a little bit more than you can handle. So there is a process of filling out a declination form, really working with those families. It's still an open enrollment process, but our PPCN event last year was the overscheduled child, and we talked a lot about the idea of too many classes, too much honors and dual enrollment, and it was causing too much trouble for our families. So again, that process of communicating with our families through our counselors, social workers, and teachers is again vitally important at the high school.
Thank you. And so really we hit on this already. The schools are graded, districts are graded on the school report card via this, the academic quality indicators. We shared this last month. As a reminder, the data releases are late, so October 29th is supposed to be the next one, December 2nd, April 27th. When that data is final and official, we will present it to the public for that. And then just in November, we have our high school curriculum guide, middle school, high school summer school guide, achievement that continues, and then our middle school principals. So if there's anything you'd like to see from our middle school principals or any questions, please feel free to send it to me, or any suggestions on the format. We continue, this has evolved through the years, and this is a little bit different, and then having the ambassadors makes it so on. But what we would do for middle school is very simple. No student ambassadors, but we'd have the middle school principals come again with about a 10-slide PowerPoint.
Anything else? All right, nothing else, Glenn?
Nope.
All right. So looking for a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Teresa? Second, Kathy. All in favor? Aye. All right, 7:39, you're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we on? All right. Welcome to the Site and Finance Committee. First item on our agenda is the Treasurer's Report. Rose?
We started this month with a beginning balance of $153,051,143.26. We had revenues in the amount of $39,640,334.01. We had expenditures in the amount of $26,929,702.65, which gave an ending balance of $165,759,829.74, all shown on the attached report.
Thank you, Rose. Any question on the treasurer's report?
Yeah, so this is just kind of continuing previous kind of following the dollars, so I just want to make sure I understand properly. So we're showing the 1.4 million in unbudgeted expense and encumbrance for building account 63. That's basically carryover money from last year that we had in excess, but it was in account 60, so but those are really part of the same, they're both part of the site and building fund.
They're all part of Fund 60
Okay,
overall.
so that negative balance in the one place is accounted for, it's just, it looks like it's a different.
Correct.
Line, but it's not.
Yeah, in the eyes of the state, there really is no Fund 63. It's all part of Fund 60. That's just so we know what is being spent on the new building versus what's being spent on our other buildings. It really was just a internal procedural move to track the dollars a little bit more closely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Next up, payment of bills. Approve the payment of bills in the amount of $6,817,156.49. Any questions on the payment of bills?
Nope.
Okay. Information, our fiscal planning and budgeting, our quarterly financial reports. Tony?
The big thing here that you'll see is compared to where we were last year, we're doing really well on the expenditure side. Last year, we had expended 18% of our budget through the first quarter. This year, we are at 16% of the budget expended. So in a year that we came under our projected expenditures, we're doing a little bit better through the first quarter. Revenue is down fairly significantly, but that is almost entirely attributed to the new property tax schedule that we've gotten. And to give you an example, we're really tracking about a month behind in when we receive our property tax dollars right now. So in October last year, we got a little over $2 million of our property tax money. In October of this year, we've gotten $52 million. So we're just getting those distributions about a month later than we usually do. So I project we should be pretty much caught up when we take a look at the second quarter review.
Any questions?
Oh, and then just so you know too, you'll see towards the back of the quarterly reports, starting on page 17, just in a move to make things a little bit more aligned to the treasurer's report, we've started to use the visual presentation through Forecast 5 as well. So that's where those new graphs have come in.
Thank you. Any questions?
Love the visuals.
Tax levy?
This is just really the first kickoff, a little bit of information about our tax levy. Next month, we will hold our tentative levy hearing and adopt that for the final adoption then in December. We are seeing property taxes continue to rise in both Will and Kendall County. Our equalized assessed value, which is the calculation to figure out the value of all the homes in our school district, has risen from just under 3.8 billion to almost 4 billion. We've seen a 5.89% increase in EAV, and that's great for our town as a whole. New construction has dropped a little bit from 59 million to 36 million, but the 59 million was an outstanding number when we saw it. That was way up. So even though we've dropped 38%, we're still at a very positive new construction look, and we're seeing construction continue to kind of boom around Plainfield. And it's also important to note, this is really the first blush of the numbers that we get. These numbers with the EAV and the new construction will change between now and when we do the final levy. And that's also why we, and we'll talk next month when we do the presentation, why we balloon a little bit, just because these numbers can fluctuate between now and March when the treasurer and the county settle up all their numbers and get their hearings done and things like that.
Any questions on tax levies? Our statement of affairs.
This is just annually we are required by the state to put together a look in terms of all of our district finances. It's kind of a presentation to the state of what we've done annually. This report will show what our assets were, our revenues, our expenditures, any liabilities that we have, the value of property, and then it also lists for transparency purposes vendor contracts in the back as well. And when approved, this will go up onto our website.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee on statement of affairs? Barb? All right. Next up on the agenda, our site recommending approval of the installations as submitted. Bonnie Macbeth, 8-foot ADA picnic table and 6-foot standard picnic table from Faison Lafayette for E-Go project. Any questions on that? You guys okay with forwarding that to Monday for approval? Okay. Next up are donations and grants. We're looking for a recommendation to move forward with the donations as submitted. Crystal Lawns, $1,000 from Quest Hill Event Committee for student incentives and resources. Excuse me. Eagle Point, $3,000 from their PTO to help defray the cost of scholastic news for all classrooms. Ivor Jones, $240 from their PTO to sponsor 4 students for outdoor education. Lakewood Falls, Baldwin Piano for music class valued at $5,000. Plainfield East, $200 in memory of Scott and Kimberly McBride. Wallen Oaks, $50 from Joseph and Amy Rollins, and $674 from the PTA for the Wallen Oaks dog. Plainfield School District, 1,700 cotton masks worth $8,500 from Ace Hardware. Those are, any questions to bring those forward for approval?
My only question is kind of just an offshoot. On the piano, is it purposeful that we don't have the donor there? Is it like an anonymous donor?
I will pull up the form really quickly here.
It was listed on the form.
Yeah, I saw it on the form. I just
Yeah.
didn't know if it procedurally if that's with a miss or.
Forms are deployed, so it's public information.
Yeah. Yeah, we can add that up for the board meeting Monday, no problem.
Okay.
Yep, it was donated by Sarah Hector.
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, we'll get that added up.
And then for information, the following grants have been received. Bonnie Macbeth, $465 grant from the Foundation for Excellence for Parent Institute, helping children learn newsletters and fidgets. Plainfield South High School, $1,000 grant for bicycle safety education through IDOT's Injury Prevention Program. Sable Middle School, $1,000 from Youth Literacy, Dollar General Literacy Foundation for text for readers with phonological deficits. That's just for information only. And then the last item is disposal of assets as submitted. Ira Jones, 75 worn out basketball and soccer uniforms. And from the custodial warehouse group, outdated unused tables and cabinets at Heritage Grove, Droughton Point, and Grand Prairie. Any questions on that? Okay. And then student activity accounts are there for our information. There were no property tax appeals. Our look ahead is levy presentation and then our farm lease contracts down the road. That's it for the agenda. Any questions?
May I add one quick thing just for the
Sure.
committee's information, and particularly for Mrs. Sykes, since she's new. The grant to Bonnie Macbeth was given as part of this year's cycle through the Foundation for Excellence of the Bonnie Macbeth Early Learning Grant
which was endowed by Mrs. Macbeth, I think 10, 11 years ago, something like that. And her family continues to give, and even though her son Kendall retired last year, they're still actively aware of it and involved, so Bonnie lives on. So.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for the information. All right, if there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Kevin's motion,
I'll second.
Barb's second. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.